Well, there was a university, a dean that was having a meeting, had all of his staff in there, and they were getting ready to start their staff meeting, and this angel appears, bam, there in the middle of them. And the angel says to the dean, you've been working hard, you've done a great job, you've been unselfish in your service. I'm going to give you a choice of giving you wealth, wisdom, or beauty. And the dean thought a minute, and he said, wisdom. Just like Solomon. Bam! And so the angel said, you got it. And then poof, he disappeared. And the staff was sitting there, kind of waiting. Finally, one of the staff members said, since you've got wisdom, we're kind of waiting for you to say something profound. And the dean says, I should have taken the money. So there you go. Maybe that was the wisdom. Got it? Okay. All right. All right. So pretenders. Okay. So Jesus talks, pretty graphically about that there are some people who claim to be Christians that aren't really Christians. Yikes. About 17 years ago, in Troop, Texas, at the United Methodist Church in Troop, Texas, the pastor there, Mike Tabb, who had served a stint as a military chaplain, took that position at, he was married to a young lady who felt like she was called into the ministry, had gone to Japan and served as missionary. They got married, I think, while he was in service. Came to Troop, had a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old kid. He was going to strip clubs. He was fooling around on her. She found out about it and confronted him, and he beat her to death in the parsonage at Troop, Texas, First United Methodist Church. I don't know if y'all remember that or not. That was y'all, God. I mean, it's. He was a pastor. Okay. So, I mean, you I don't know if you pay any attention to Christian news lately, but there's been 2 or 3 or 4 leading Christian authors and tour people, one worship leader that recanted their faith. They just said, "No, I walked away," and decided, I don't really believe all that stuff after all. There have been multiple ministers in big whiz-bang churches here lately that, come to find out they have been taking advantage of ladies in their congregation for years. Bill Hybels at, I forget the name of that church outside Chicago, one of the big ones I've seen, been to conferences, and some of their associates have done really great presentations. Willow Creek Church, yeah. Yikes, y'all, it's scary. Now, anybody's subject to fall, right? I mean, we're all subject, none of us is immune to falling to the tempter's snare. Yeah, there's that. But then there's some that are just like, wait a minute. Christians don't do that kind of stuff. I mean, it just makes you wonder. And it kind of, the thing I went to, I guess it's that I've been through some theological training, and and it's opened up a lot of questions for me about some things. And couldn't help but go in my own mind to that once saved, always saved thing, you know, that is taught. And I don't know, y'all, it's a question for me. I still ain't sure about that. But if you notice in this passage, Jesus says, I never knew you. Depart from me, I never knew you. Which leads me to believe these people were never really saved to begin with. Which kind of, if you push some of those folks about the once saved, always saved, they will quote a passage in 1 John chapter 2, verse 19. These people left our churches, but they never really belonged to us. Otherwise, they would have stayed with us. When they left, it proved that they did not belong with us.
Amen.
So maybe they're right. Maybe, I don't know. I still am not really settled on that whole thing. But that ties in with what Jesus is saying here. I never knew you. So I'll leave that with you. I don't know. I'm not sure about all that stuff. They're never saved. Maybe never saved. One thing that you also see here is Jesus is saying, I'm going to be sitting on the judgment seat one day in the place of God. Okay. Jesus is saying, guess what? I am the one. I am the Holy One of Israel. I am the Messiah. I have the power and the authority to sit on the judgment seat and to separate the sheep from the goats. I will be in that position one day. So what does that say? Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe that Jesus is God, okay? So just y'all need to know some of this stuff. I'm just lobbing some random stuff out at you here. If you may have friends, and I know Kim and I do, we've got friends that are Jehovah's Witnesses. We love them, we treat them with respect and dignity. We had dinner with one the other night. They don't believe that Jesus is God. They don't believe that they believe that he didn't really rise from the dead. That it was actually Michael, the archangel, that after Jesus was crucified and buried, that God said, okay, Michael, you're now Jesus. Okay. Just so you know, I'm just saying, they call themselves Christians now. Okay. I don't know. I don't have it all figured out. Okay. Don't hate on people, because they're, not like us. We need to love them. If we don't love them and treat them with respect and dignity and shine the light of Christ into their world, how are they ever going to know the truth? I don't know. Okay. I don't really want to talk a whole lot about this. It's scary stuff, Paul talks about work out your salvation with fear and trembling, right? Jesus also says those who persevere to the end will be saved. There's more to being a saved person than just making a profession of faith. Sorry, there's more to it than that. Jesus makes it very clear here. You have to follow me. And that means letting go of this world. Okay, sorry about that. All right, build your house on the rock. My old house in Livingston, Kim's gonna probably roll her eyes. My old house in Livingston. She kind of inherited my old house in Livingston. It's down at the bottom of Cemetery Hill, okay? Cemetery Hill's a high hill that goes all the way across Pan Am, out Business 59 up. There's a big cemetery up there on top of that hill. But a mile or so, roughly a mile, half a mile to 3/4 mile or something. It's a long way anyway, pushing a mile. There's my little old house right at the very bottom of that hill. Which, is okay, except when it rains a lot. Which in the springtime, you get those 3 or 4 inch gully washers, Every year you get 2 or 3, seem like it. The first time it came one of those, I stood out on my little back, patio thing, which was just a little bitty slab of cement, and saw the water rising as it came around my house. And I'm saying it got that deep, flowing water coming off of that hill, and it almost came in the house. It came right up to the back door, which was elevated, I'd say, a foot above the ground level. It was right there, about to come in the door. And I'm like, I got to do something about this. You can't stop water, right? You can't stop it. Best you can hope to do is divert it, So the next opportunity I got, I had a dump truck load of dirt dumped out in my front yard, and I got my wheelbarrow and I started taking dirt back there to the backyard and building a berm about a foot high or so in the backyard to divert the water as much as, at least split the water, so I wouldn't have that whole mess trying to come through my backyard, so I could divert some of it out to the street. And it worked for the longest time. Eventually we'd have to put a privacy fence up on a foundation of cement about yay high above the ground level, because over the years it got worse and worse. Just say it. And my neighbor, the Dabneys, Mike and Susan Dabney, they built their house after we got there, and they hauled in truckload after truckload after truckload of dirt, and they built their house up they made a ridge there that they built their house on. The water's never come close to them. And as a matter of fact, it made my water problem a little worse. Because what would have gone their way all came my way now. So just saying, Jesus says, anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise like a person who builds his house on solid rock. Well, in their instance, it was dirt, but they were smart. They were wise, and they got their house up out of that mess. And the old guy, I forget his name now, lived across the street from me, was in his 90s. I don't know how many times the water went in their house, and they had to drag the carpet out. It would get in that deep. They'd have to cut the sheetrock. We're not talking about Beaumont and Orange. We're talking about Livingston, okay? And this was not floods. This was just heavy rains. And it would run down the street, up over the curve of the street. It was something to see. Anyway, Jesus uses this construction analogy for building our life on a solid foundation in Christ, right? It's imperative that we not only accept Jesus, right? There's that little thing, yeah. We have to, as in Wesleyan theology, to call it justifying grace, right? We do have that moment, that instant where we say, come in, Jesus, and be Lord of my life. Forgive me of my sins. Bam. Yes, that is necessary to go on to the next level, right? But the rest of it is sanctifying grace. It's where God, we continue that work of following Christ, of his holiness being poured into us, him chiseling all those rough edges off of us. That takes, guess what, a lifetime. It takes a lifetime. You never get there, I don't think. Now, I had to stand up in front of the whole Texas Annual Conference and say, yes, I believe I can be made perfect in this life. Well, it was kind of I had my fingers crossed, you know, something like that kind of thing. I guess it's possible. Yeah, it's possible. Maybe, you know, maybe. It's hypothetically it's possible. But it's hard work. I know the Lord has been, He's had His work cut out for Him. But I can look back over my shoulder 10 years, 20 years back and say, yeah, buddy, I ain't the same person I was then. God has done some working. I don't know about y'all. And this is why Jesus tells us in Matthew 28, go and make disciples, not converts, disciples. Teach people how to follow me, right? It's hard work. It's hard work, right? So, anyway, okay. Enduring the storm. I don't know why I threw this in. I got the New Conventional Wisdom for Youth Ministry. They've seen some issues with the youth ministry dynamic that's been in place for these many years, where we pull the kids out when they're young'uns, and we put them in the children's church and children's Sunday school. And then when they get to junior high, we put them in junior high youth group. And then when they get to senior high, we put them in senior high youth group and Sunday school and all that stuff. And they're kept away from the adults. And lo and behold, when they get to college, they leave the church and don't come back. A large majority of them have done that. And they're having to rethink all that, and they've come to find that the young people from the small churches, where they had to be placed in all age ministry stuff, and were in Sunday school and church and gathering small groups with older folks too, people who've been through the hard knocks of this world, and hear their witnesses and all. They're more inclined to stick around in the church because their faith isn't grounded in their peers. Their peers haven't been through anything. They haven't seen the storms of life. They haven't had to endure the storms of life. So when the storms come and they're going to fall away because they don't know any better. But the odds are much better for those who have been around adults and have heard the wisdom of the adult Christians poured into them and heard their witnesses to how, yes, I went through a hard time with this issue and that issue, but you know what? God was there with me and He got me through it. Do you think our young people need to hear that message?
Yes.
Yeah, they do. And it helps build their faith, you know? We're not doing them any favors by cutting them out and not allowing them to hear the truth and the hard knock stories. They need to hear it. And they need to know that, yeah, we've struggled. And yeah, I've struggled with my faith at times. But you know what? God was there through that too. Okay. So I remember when I was about 16 years old, a hurricane came through my little old hometown of Florilla, Alabama. It's about, I don't know, as the crow flies, 50, 60 miles in from Destin. Hurricane Eloise came right up Highway 331, just came right up. The eye of it came right up. And my little old town, we were, the house we lived in wasn't, that great. So we went and stayed at my Uncle Almer's and Aunt Matt's. And of course, this was not smart. They had a big old plate glass window. We sat right there in front of that big plate glass window and watched the hurricane you know, and watch stuff blow down the street this way, and the tin blow off of the auto parts place across the street, and it just ripped it all, and had to get out in the middle of it and move our cars because the pecan trees in the backyard were blowing over and did blow over. And it was a mess, you know. And then the eye came over. We got out and looked around. And then, you know, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, here it comes back, and the wind coming from the other way, you know, just. I don't want to be in another hurricane. I figured that out real quick. Don't want to see that again. I'm just okay without being and went without electricity for I don't know how long, a week maybe, something like that. Ate enough potted meat and crackers till I, you know, was sick of it. Vienna sausage, you know, all that stuff. Anyway, but Jesus doesn't, here in this passage, he doesn't, he infers that guess what? The storms are going to come our way. Storms are going to come. Just because you're a born-again believer in Jesus Christ does not mean you're immune to the storms of life. They're still going to come. This world is broken. It's a fallen world. Stuff's going to happen to us regardless. But he says if your faith is not grounded on the rock of Jesus Christ, you're gonna fold like a house of cards. You're just gonna it's gonna implode. And it's gonna devastate you, right? It's gonna hurt. And you're gonna be blown like the wind. But the life built on the foundation of Christ will endure the storm. It will endure. Yeah, you might have to cut some trees out of your yard. Yeah, you might have to replace some shingles on your house or some boards or whatever. You might even have to bail some water out. You might have to muck out your house. Jimmy and TJ, you might have to do some mucking out, you know, and woo, that ain't pleasant work. Cutting out that sheetrock and hauling out that wet carpet, that's a mess. But you know what? You'll live through it. It'll be all right. There's daylight on the other side, you know. It's all good. So hang in there, y'all. Follow Christ. There's nobody else that loves you like he does. He has a plan for everybody's life. Yes, he does. And he will use you in ways you can't even imagine. But we have to willingly submit to him. We have to willingly let him lead us. And we have to be willing to follow. And I don't know what that's going to be for anybody. I don't even know what it's going to mean for me. You know, most of the time I'm like, okay, Lord, I don't know what. But if we submit to him and do our best, try to follow him. Do we have it down perfect? I know I don't. But he wants us to try. He wants us to try to give it our best shot. And if we fail, if we fall, he wants us to get back up. And he'll help us get back up and get back on that right path of following him. So, all right. So, true wisdom isn't about taking the money and running, okay? Like the guy, the dean of the college, you know, really. True wisdom is about building your life on the rock of Christ. Not on anything in this world. Not on chasing after money or power, fame, or even your youngins and your grand youngins. That ain't it. They need to see us standing on the rock of Jesus.
Amen.
Because what hope do they have if we're not showing them the hope of Christ?
Yes.
The world will throw a lot of stuff your direction and make you want to follow after it. But trust in Christ. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Amen. We're going to stand and sing our closing.